welcome to a brand new edition for our daily news program broadcast to you live here on Canal Algérie. To the headlines. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, chairs the ceremony of Algeria's Military Cup final won by the 1st Military Region Squad. Ahead of the blessed month of Ramadan, Air Algérie company decides to halve the flight tickets for the benefit of our nationals coming to Algeria. The situation is always fragile in Palestine, with fresh attacks perpetrated by the Zionist military machinery amid a humanitarian tragedy. And we wrap up our news with a guided tour to Qasr al-Qanadsa, or castle, to discover its typical architecture and the social life of our ancestors. Welcome again. First of all, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, presided over the 51st edition of the Algerian Military Football Cup final. The event took place at the Center for the Gathering and Preparation of Military Sports Teams, Shahid Masoud Ben Jeriw in Ben Aknoun. Upon his arrival, the head of state was welcomed by the Army General Said Chingriha, Chief of Staff of the People's National Army, and Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arbawi. And following the welcoming ceremony, the President listened to the national anthem and reviewed the various military formations that paid him the honors. The President of the Republic greeted those present, including the Army General, Commander of the Republican Guard, the Secretary General of the Ministry of National Defense, Commanders of the Armed Forces and the National Gendarmerie, the Commander of the 1st Military Region, the Head of the Employment Preparation Department of the PNA's General Staff, and the Head of the Military Sports Service.
على وجه الخصوص تفضل السيد عبدالمجيد تبون رئيس الجمهورية القائد الأعلى للقوات المسلحة وزير الدفاع الوطني بتكريم عدد من الرياضيين العسكريين الذين مثلوا الجزائر أحسن.
أنا أتمنى إن شاء الله باش النخبة الرياضية تاعنا كانت عسكرية أو مدنية ترفع الراية. فيه رياضيين قويين في الملاكمة، فيه رياضيين قويين في الماراثون. شكرا مرة أخرى، الله يوفقكم.
نتيجة صائبة دفعت بالنخب الرياضية المنتخب الوطني العسكري لكرة البدن الجيد.
أنا نتمنى إن شاء الله باش النخبة الرياضية تاعنا كانت عسكرية أو مدنية ترفع الراية. فيه رياضيين قويين في الملاكمة، فيه رياضيين قويين في الماراثون. بالمناسبة هذه أولا باش نقدم مرة أخرى كل الشكر يعني والامتنان للرياضة العسكرية على انضباطها وعلى النتائج نتاعها. عمرها ولا خيبت ودائما كانت ما بين الأوائل.
The president then joined the honor stand at the center of the stadium.
السيد رئيس الجمهورية القائد الأعلى للقوات المسلحة وزير الدفاع الوطني، الفريقان المنشطان لنهائي كأس الجمهورية العسكري لكرة القدم في طبعتها 51 جاهزان. العقيد بوزيدي منير مصلحة الرياضات العسكرية لدائرة الاستعمال والتحضير بأركان الجيش الوطني الشعبي.
في هذه الأثناء نبيل مخالفة يعطي إشارة انطلاق هذه المواجهة. طبعا
The President of the Republic presided over the ceremony to kick off the final match between the team of the Land Forces Command and that of the 1st Military Region. At the end of the game, the head of state presided over the awarding and handing over of medals ceremony, starting with the referees. The Ground Forces Command team was awarded silver medals, while the team of the 1st Military Region received gold medals. Finally, the head of state presented the Republic's Cup to the winner team, which is that of the 1st Military Region.
سيحصل على توقيع من كرة المباراة من طرف السيد الرئيس. طبعا ستبقى هذه الصورة خالدة في. إذن رئيس الجمهورية يشرع الآن في تقديم الميدالية الفضية، ميدالية المركز الثاني لصاحب المركز الثاني. بالتأكيد كانت حسرة وأسف على ضياع اللقب بركلات الجزاء. القائد الأعلى للقوات المسلحة وزير الدفاع الوطني هذا هو عماد بن عيسى يتسلم الميدالية الذهبية ويتسلم الكأس الغالية، كأس الجزائر العسكرية من بين يدي أو من يدي السيد الرئيس رئيس الجمهورية القائد الأعلى للقوات المسلحة وزير الدفاع الوطني. يحيون السيد الرئيس وبالتأكيد يشكرونه على هذا الحضور الشخصي وإشرافه.
During the same event, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, honored a group of elite military athletes who displayed high professionalism and exceptional performance, achieving positive results in various sports disciplines. They excelled on championship podiums, proudly hoisting the national flag in international sporting events. The President of the Republic, Minister of National Defense, wound up the 51st edition of the Algérie Military Football Cup by signing the gold register of the Gathering and Preparation Center of Military Sports Teams in Ben Aknoun in the 1st Military Region. Moving on to cooperation, Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arbawi received this Tuesday the Tunisian Interior Minister Canal Al-Faki, now on a visit to Algeria as part of the first bilateral commission for the promotion and development of cross-border areas between Algeria and Tunisia. An audience which took place in the presence of the Interior Minister Brahim Merad. During the meeting, the two sides hailed the deep relations of solidarity binding the two countries and peoples, reflecting the two presidencies' political consensus in dealing with the regional and international issues. The two parties reviewed the outcomes of the first session of this bilateral mechanism, affirming the joint willingness to further promote the bilateral relations, notably in the Algerian-Tunisian border areas, in quest of developing bilateral security cooperation in line with the shared visions of the two heads of state. The first session of the Bilateral Commission for Promoting and Developing the Algerian-Tunisian border regions wound up on Tuesday, a well-defined roadmap carefully prepared by these regions' governors to spur a lasting progress. More details with our own Melissa Kabash.
The first session of the Bilateral Commission for the Promotion and Development of the Algerian-Tunisian border regions wound up with several suggestions and a roadmap set up by governors of border provinces of both countries. The roadmap included several projects, including the establishment of a joint system for prevention, early warning and intervention to reduce forest fires, completing the study project on developing border trade and economic exchanges between the two border provinces of Taraf and Jandouba. It also included a study on the project to create a Tunisian-Algerian exhibition company that would organize a number of annual exhibitions at the level of the border provinces. On the other hand, and with an aim to open up the inhabitants of isolated regions, the governors of Tibissa and Al Qasreen suggested a study on the re-exploitation of the land transport linking Tibissa to the city of Al Qasreen, which was already existing, in addition to the railway linking Constantine to Hydra in Tunisia through Tibissa. The governors of Soqahras and Al-Kaf also convened for their part to examine the project of a joint economic activity zone.
In other news, and as part of the Algerian-Italian military cooperation, activities of the 14th session of the Algerian-Italian Joint Committee for Cooperation in Techno-Military and Defense Industry fields took place today and yesterday at the National Army Circle in Beni Messous here in Algiers, where Major General Mohammed Salah bin Bisha, Secretary General of the Ministry of National Defense, received the Chief of Staff Portolano Luciano, General Secretary of the Italian Ministry of Defense and National Director of Armaments. During the meeting, the two parties exchanged views on matters of common interest. They co-chaired the 14th session, assessing the activities carried out in 2023 and outlining the planned activities for 2024. This session provided an opportunity to enhance cooperation in various military sectors between the two countries. At the end of the session, both parties signed the minutes and exchanged symbolic gifts. Still with the international cooperation, and this time in China, where the Minister of Housing, Mohammed Belaribi, co-chaired this Tuesday in Beijing with the Chinese Minister of Trade, Wang Wentao, the 8th session of the Algerian-Chinese Joint Commission for Economic, Commercial and Technical Cooperation. During the proceedings of the Commission, a detailed presentation on the joint efforts for the development of bilateral relations was made, relations that witness a significant development, notably after the President of the Republic's last visit to China, and which wound up with fruitful outcomes for the two parties. On this occasion, Belaribi called on to make the necessary efforts in order to concretize these results in a way that guarantees the sustainability of the traditional friendly relations of solidarity and cooperation binding Algeria and China. And ahead of the blessed month of Ramadan, the national airlines company Air Algérie has decided to exceptionally halve the flight tickets to Algeria for Algerian nationals coming from France, Great Britain and Canada, a move meant to help our community members spend this special religious time with their families. Moving on to transport news, the port of Arzew is set to experience a boom following the extension and development works it is undergoing, which will expand the capacity of the port, facilitate loading and unloading products, and as a result, raise the volume of exports. Letizia Sadqawi with the details.
The Arzew port, considered as one of the most important maritime facades of Algeria, is undergoing development and extension works of its quays with the main objective of increasing the volume of exports. This major maritime project extends on a distance of 52 hectares. It will be used for loading and unloading non-hydrocarbon products, in addition to exporting products of the group to Shiali and the iron mine of Garaj Bilad. The province of Iran is also undergoing development works of a set of port infrastructure to provide the best service for passengers. The passengers can evidently conduct their trips in favorable conditions. In the same province, basic infrastructure and prominent projects of the sector of transport are in progress with the objective of boosting the national economy. We have given instructions to accelerate the pace of the works for this project to be delivered on time, as it is of great importance and will raise the capacity of the port. We have also built an infrastructure devoted to ship repairing, in addition to inaugurating alongside the governor this port infrastructure ahead of the summer season.
عينا مع سيد الوالي مختلف البرامج الخاصة بقطاع النقل بدأناها بهذه المحطة اللي دشناها.
The transport sector of Iran, in particular the maritime transport, is experiencing a dynamism that is expected to contribute in burgeoning the country's economy.
Atrocities of the Zionist occupiers spanning over 115 days now are persisting in the Gaza Strip, with daily intense bombings on residential areas claiming a large number of lives and leveling the remaining buildings to the ground. Famine is also looming over Gaza, which has become a breeding ground for diseases. Letizia Sadqawi once again.
Over 100 days into the genocide, Gazans are still falling martyrs on the daily. In the last 24 hours, dozens of Palestinians were murdered during intense bombings on Gaza Strip, where most neighborhoods are already leveled to the ground, ensuing large numbers of displaced Palestinians in a critical humanitarian situation, notably after the suspension of funding to the UNRWA, providing vital aid to Palestinians much in need of it by 12 countries, undermining by this humanitarian aid operations. A meeting of the main donors to the UNRWA is expected at the initiative of the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres as an attempt to maintain funding for the organization. In Gaza Strip, the health situation is alarming, with most hospitals no longer fit for purpose. The remaining ones are lacking equipment and personnel, facing a flock of wounded daily, who are now treated in the most shocking conditions, some even on the ground.
In the hospital, the situation is critical. Exacerbating the catastrophe, we cannot treat the patients due to the lack of equipment and medicine. The number of cases surpasses the capacity of the hospitals, which are not prepared to receive this number of patients. The situation is extremely difficult.
Efforts continue behind the scenes to broker a new truce after that of November, notably the last meeting held in Paris this weekend with American, Egyptian and Qatari representatives, in addition to those of the Zionist entity. Members of the UN Security Council are expected to hold an emergency meeting upon the request of Algeria on the Palestinian issue in order to debate the decision of the International Court of Justice in regard to the conservatory measures imposed on the Zionist entity for its barbaric aggressions against the Palestinian people in Gaza.
To sports now, and as part of the National Football Championship, CR Belouizdad jumped to the second rank of the stand-in with 28 points after beating MC Oran with 2-0 in a rescheduled game held on Tuesday at the 5th of July Olympic Stadium here in Algiers. The goals were scored by Lawafi and Mazian. Moving on to the south of the country, precisely to the extreme west of Bishar province, where we will find Qasr al-Qanatsa, an ancestral heritage that survived nearly 9 decades, a typical architecture of the Saharan region. More insights on this beautiful place with Melissa Kabash.
A live witness of the rich cultural and architectural patrimony of Bishar province, Qasr al-Qanatsa, or castle, classified as a national heritage since 1999, a treasure that contains the history of Qasur al-Sawra. Haj Abdurrahman bin Addi, one of the inhabitants of Al-Qasr, has always transferred his knowledge related to the history of this infrastructure.
This neighborhood has been built 9 decades ago. It includes the Mosque of Sidi al-Hajj bin Ahmed, as well as the Mosque of Sidi Muhammad bin Bouziane and the Shrine of Nana Kulthum. Its architecture has great resemblance to that of the Ottomans. It is a precious heritage to preserve. Like all the qasurs located in the north of Bishar province and that of the Sawra, this palace is distinguished by its narrow streets. Cold in the winter and hot in the summer, it is also known for the materials used in its building, notably bricks and stones for the walls and palm trunks for the roofs.
To preserve this historic heritage, Khalil bin Addi has set up a tent to welcome visitors and tourists in a warm atmosphere.
I do my best to provide a full experience of this rich heritage. I also explain the daily life of the inhabitants and that of our ancestors.
C'est la première fois que je mets pied dans...
I came from Tizi Ouzou province. This is my first time visiting the south of the country, precisely the province of Bishar.
L'Algérie est vaste.
Algeria's heritage is so rich and large, we must do our best to preserve it and transfer it to upcoming generations.
The palace has witnessed several renovation operations with an aim to preserve it as a telling evidence of the past cultures, traditions, and history.
And with this beautiful footage, we come to the end for today's program. Thank you for tuning in.